Hi everyone, welcome to Bonnie Carolee Makes Cards. Today's card features Alex Syberia Designs Bouquet of Hope. I switched gears while working with this gorgeous image in favor of a subtle layered white on white background. This digital image was printed on Canson XL watercolor and then cut down to a slimline panel. I'm painting with Mission Gold watercolors. As you can see, I began by watercoloring the background. I ended up not loving it as I continued with my painting of the image, and so I got rid of it. Yes, just like that, I got rid of it. But not until the painting was just about complete, so you're going to have to look at it for a while. I'm using a wet on wet technique, which simply means that I paint what I'm working on with clean water and then go in with my paint afterwards. I'm starting off by underpainting all of the images. This initial layer of color on all of the elements will let me see how everything's going to pull together. I'm starting off with just some pale green and a little hint of blue on the leaves before I move on to the flowers. For the underpainting of the flowers, I don't worry about the individual petals. I simply wet the entire bloom and drop in some rose color. The succulent is painted with a base of olive green. Before I continue with the overpainting, I let the panel dry completely. I use a quick and easy test to make sure that my panel is dry. I lightly touch it. If it is cool, there is still moisture in the paper. If it is room temperature, it's good to go. For the leaves, I layer on the color a couple of times, letting it dry in between each layer. I continue to use a wet on wet technique, so the painted leaf is coated with clean water, and for the first layer, I'm going to be adding in some blue. When the leaves are dry, I go ahead and add a second layer of color. This time I'm going to add purple. A thin coat of clean water is applied before the color is dropped in. This will prevent a hard edge from forming. It may sound like there's a lot of time waiting for things to dry, but by the time one leaf is done, the next leaf is dry and ready to work on. For the succulent, I'm going to add purple to the base of each petal. As I work petal by petal, each petal is first coated with clean water and then the color dropped in. The underpainting of the olive green provides some tonal variation. While I wait for the initial petals to dry on the succulent, I can move over to the flowers and start working on painting alternate petals. The flowers and flower buds are going to be painted in rose tones. By the time I have finished painting a few petals on the flower buds, I can go back and work on the succulent again. And this is how the painting continues, skipping around from petal to petal, only working on those that are next to petals that are dry, using a wet on wet technique, applying clean water, and then dropping in color. As the painting progressed, I became more and more dissatisfied with that color wash background. I just needed to know if this was going to work before I invested any more time into this. And that's when I got the scissors out and started fussy cutting the image. Thankfully, the outline of the image was not too complex and it was fairly easy to cut out. I finished painting the last few petals on the large flower and then spattered it with watered down gouache. I used a number 1 brush so the spatter would be fine. The white on white background was created with several dyes from Pink Fresh Studio. I adhered slim fancy diagonal stripes to a plain panel using permanent spray adhesive. This panel would be too big for the scalloped edge, so it was die cut using the second largest die, the plain one, in slim stitched rectangles. The larger die with the stitches would be used to die cut black cardstock. With the slim stitch scalloped rectangle, you end up with 2 separate die cuts. For another layered detail, I'll be stacking the inside scalloped rectangle on foam. So now I have the diagonal panel adhered to the black cardstock, and I'm going to attach the scalloped edge directly to that. The inside scalloped edge is going to be mounted on foam. So the foam die cut did stretch a little bit. On both sides of the long edge of the foam die cut, I cut it in the middle, trimmed just a little bit off so I could get those scallops to line up. The floral image has 3 flat edges on both sides and the bottom that I want to butt right up against that outside scalloped edge. The flat edges on both sides of the image are trimmed down so that they will fit within that scalloped frame. Some of the leaves will be popped up from the panel, so when I apply the glue, I make sure to avoid those areas. With the image in place, it's now time to adhere the foam-backed inside scalloped rectangle. The edge of this rectangle is snugged right up against the other scalloped rectangle. As I place it down, any of the leaves that extend beyond the borders of it are lifted up to sit on top of the raised edge. For those leaves that are going to have the added dimension, I slip foam squares underneath them. I have 3 die cuts that I'm going to stack from Simon Says Stamp's script Hello. They have been dotted with Tombow glue and left to dry until they are tacky. The sentiment is easily stacked and has the flexibility of being able to make any adjustments until it is nicely aligned. The sentiment is popped on the card and I'm ready to do the final embellishments. As much as I am a fan of dimension, I'm also a big fan of sparkle and shine, and so I add lots of iridescent confetti topped with Nouveau Crystal Drops Morning Dew. I know, that is like a standard practice for me, but when the morning dew is dry and clear, those iridescent confetti just look gorgeous. As an added touch, I also brushed on some Nouveau Glitter Drops White Blizzard to the tips of the petals. And that completes this card featuring Alex Syberia Designs Bouquet of Hope. Some cards just evolve, as it was with this one. I'm happy with the layered background for this floral and glad that I didn't give up on it. I hope you enjoyed this video. All of the supplies that I've used in this card can be found in the description of my YouTube video or on my blog at bonniecarolee.com. As always, I appreciate your visit.